Anna didn't graduate from anywhere. According to her version of events, Anna cut her gym skirt so that it was above the knee. I mean well above the knee, which was a very prophetic thing to do in terms of fashion. Those very short skirts had only just kind of kicked in. Anyway, her French mistress lifted Anna up onto a desk and said, "Look at this girl. She's not worthy of this great school, and she's just obsessed with clothes. She can go home." And so Anna left North London Collegiate and never went back. Hello, how are you? Welcome to my channel. My name is Cheer Denise. So today we're going to keep going in our book about Anna Wintour, the biography by Jerry Oppenheimer entitled Front Row. We're going to be reading chapters 5 and 6 today, and we're going to keep talking about her in her late teens. Now, yesterday we spent a good amount of time discussing her taste in men. She really wants the older man, and without very much expertise, one could easily realize that the reason she was looking for an older man is because she's kind of looking for a father figure. Her dad really loves her, but really doesn't have a lot of time for her. Of the kids, she's definitely his favorite. But as far as the whole family goes, not that into being a dad. You know, he's got big things happening over at the newspaper. And, I think that a lot of men struggle with coming home and it's not always win-win-win at home, but when you are on the top of your game at the office, it's very easy to want to stay there and make that your whole world. Well, he was very much a man of his time, and so that's kind of what he did. His work was his life. Equally, though, Anna's mother's also really obsessed with the work she does as a social worker, to the point that her kids, and we're going to talk about it today a little bit, her kids felt slighted by the fact that it appeared that she loved the children that she worked with more than she loved her own flesh and blood. So that's a real point of contention. However, Anna's not really that involved with her family anyway, because she lives down in the servants' quarters and has a flat of her own with its own entrance. So it doesn't really matter to her what mommy and daddy are doing upstairs with the other kids, because that's not her life. Her life is clubbing all night long and then going to school and sometimes staying for the day, but sometimes just leaving because boring. She was playing hooky all the day, and we're going to find out how that pans out for her today. All right, let's begin on chapter 5. It's called London Party Girl. More in line with the kind of men Anna was drawn to was a hustling, ambitious charmer of a Fleet Street hack named Nigel Dempster, almost a decade her senior. When Dempster began seeing 16-year-old Anna, he was digging up dirt at parties for London's Daily Express gossip column. Anna was attracted to Dempster's good looks and debonair manner, and especially his growing circle of fancy friends, and the posh riffraff he attracted. Vivian Lasky, however, came away feeling he was smarmy and slimy, and Charles Wintour's blood boiled when he discovered that his daughter was seeing a gossip hack. For the most part, Anna's father was rather sanguine about the men she dated. Dempster was a glaring exception. There were other facets about Dempster that were appealing to Anna, such as his purported lineage. He claimed he was a member of one of the two families who founded the powerful Elder Dempster Lines, a shipping company that controlled West African trade beginning in the late 19th century, and were on par with the Cunards. There was even a glossy in circulation of Dempster at the age of 20 in white tie and tails, which he asserted was a family society shot. Whatever the truth, Anna was intrigued, and Dempster, always on the make, saw both journalistic and romantic possibilities with her. The two became an item. They had much in common, sharing similar interests and values, power, wealth, and celebrity. Journalist Paul Callan, who would later have his innings with Dempster, notes, "A lot of guys wanted to go out with Anna because they wanted to curry favor with Charles Wintour, and that included Dempster." Through Anna, Dempster had fantasies of becoming Charles Wintour's big gun. His goal was to be the best-known, highest-paid gossip columnist of his time. The latter would come to be, but without the help of Anna's father, who thought he was a cretin. Years later, Lasky still couldn't see what Anna saw in Dempster. "He was so quintessentially British, backstabbing and bitchy," she says. "I didn't think he had a moral fiber in his body. Charming to your face, then that slut." Through Dempster, who was beginning to hobnob with the highbrow and low-life of British society and celebrityhood, Anna became a fixture of sorts on the London party and club circuit, not quite the Anglo version of a Hilton sister, but considered hot stuff and recognizable to the cognoscenti. Fleet Street reporters who also made the scene and who knew who her father was. Friday evening before going out, Anna would watch Ready, Steady, Go and first thing Saturday morning she was at either Bibba or Mary Quaint, two of the hippest boutiques, shopping for the kind of kicky, sexy outfit Kathy McGowan had worn on the tube the night before. Saturday nights, she trucked off to the Laskys' palatial duplex apartment overlooking Hyde Park for dinner, with 8 o'clock set aside to watch the Forsyte Saga. At 11, never ever earlier because it wasn't fashionable, she'd trot off to the clubs, usually starting her rounds at midnight at Dempster's main hangout, Annabelle's, filled with an assortment of aristocrats, real and self-styled, and a slightly loosed gambling crowd. Anna loved the attention of the men, consumed the bitchy gossip, and kept a sharp eye on the women, what they were wearing, how they wore it, and what was in and what was out. She always made a show at the Ad Lib near Leicester Square, which had a reputation as being a hangout for the hottest dollies in London, a club where virtually everybody at the balcony overlooking the dance floor was toking up. Anna didn't do drugs, even though marijuana, cocaine, LSD, and everything else one could snort, inhale, or shoot to get recreationally high was all around her, everywhere she went. Anna was always too much in control to be interested in drugs, Lasky maintains. She was hideously healthy. She says Anna didn't even drink at the clubs, but nursed Coca-Colas, though she wouldn't turn down champagne if offered by a gentleman. Okay, can I just say this real quick? I almost think it's weirder that she would want to be in that atmosphere and not be drinking or even doing drugs, because what is in that atmosphere that you would want to partake in unless you were high or drinking? Because it's not like you're having like a ton of great conversations. It's too loud. It's like night after night after night after night to do that stone cold sober, I think is almost more shocking than for somebody who is addicted to the lifestyle because they were addicted to the substances of the lifestyle. But isn't it a little bit chilling that she would sit there sipping on Coca-Colas and just being in this raucous atmosphere, stone cold sober? I don't know. Maybe that's not weird to anybody, but I mean, it's like, it'd be one thing if you've been dragged out with your friends, you're like, I don't want to drink. And so you were there. But it feels to me like a whole nother thing to choose to be there night after night, stone cold sober. I don't see what that atmosphere has to offer you if you're not interested in, all of it. Anyway, Anna often went off to Dolly's on Jerram Street, which drew a hip crowd of journalists and rockers, and she was a regular at the very exclusive London discotheque called Sibylla's on Swallow Street near Piccadilly Circus, which became known as the Beatles Disco because George Harrison owned a small percentage of the place. The club's private pre-opening night was unforgettable, with an elite bold-faced list of celebs, all the Beatles, the Stones, Kathy McGowan, Julie Christie, Mary Quaint, among other London fixtures. It was a kind of place where the owner felt it was successful only if you couldn't get in, making it Anna's kind of place, and she was there with Nigel Dempster for the premiere. At 15 or 16, Anna had this downtown London life, Lasky says. London was a hotbed of clubs, concerts, and endless parties. She went where it was fashionable to be seen and to see people. She didn't need much sleep. She had enormous energy. She liked clubs and clubbing and dancing more than she liked the Beatles or the Stones. Anna didn't go to rock concerts and didn't go gaga over anyone in pop music. But Anna did once become mad for a sexy star in his late 50s, more her speed, the actor Laurence Olivier, whom she saw in Shakespeare's Henry V at least a dozen times. While most girls Anna's age were chasing Mick and Keith, she began pursuing Olivier. She often skipped school, bringing a satchel of clothing with her, changing out of her ugly North London collegiate uniform and into something sexy in the ladies' room of the underground station near the office building, where Olivier had his production company. She'd stake out the lobby and wait for hours in hopes of meeting him. This went on sporadically for months, but she never was successful, and she finally gave up her quest. Nothing seemed too risque for 16-year-old Anna, who became delicious arm candy for Dempster, who once boasted that his girlfriend's breasts were large and quite delectable. When the London Playboy Club and Casino, the 5-story swingers' paradise, had its star-studded opening night party, overseen by Woody Allen as a favor to Hugh Hefner, on July 1st, 1966, Anna partied the night away with Dempster and hundreds of other sybarites, hedonists, and celebrities who had turned out for the festivities. As Vivian Lasky notes Riley, she'd go to the opening of an envelope. In this case, though, it was a celebration of half-naked bunnies spinning roulette wheels and turning cards for oil-rich Arabs, British playboys and their birds, and the usual turnout of Eurotrash. The wild goings-on continued through the night at the Playmate Bar, in the disco, and at intimate gatherings in members' rented private rooms. An Evening Standard photographer was there to cover the event and shot photos of Anna shaking hands with pajama-clad Hugh Hefner. The next day, a gloating photo editor showed the pictures to Anna's father. It did not go over well, recalled Dempster. Charles Wintour didn't mind Anna having her independence, but he did mind her going out with Dempster. Let me just interrupt our story, okay? Dempster isn't the reason your daughter's showing up at the Playboy Club. 15-year-old girl at a place like that? Enough already blaming Dempster for this, all right? And not saying that he was some kind of paragon of masculine excellence and that, her dad just needed to give this poor gossip columnist a break. I'm sure he was smarmy and slimy. I'm sure he was the worst. But your daughter going out to these clubs is kind of more your fault than Dempster's fault. Shouldn't you have something to say about this? Shouldn't you, as soon as you realize that this is the level of clubbing she's doing, wouldn't you as a dad be like, we might have let her go her own way a little too much. You might need to rein it in. If I'm getting photos at work of my daughter shaking the hand of Hugh Hefner, she's 15-year-old at this adult party, we're going to need to renegotiate what we're doing at home as far as the level of independence we've allotted to this child. All right, anyway. Charles Wintour didn't mind Anna having her independence, but he did mind her going out with Dempster. Brian Vine, a one-time New York bureau chief of the London Daily Express, saw Anna and Dempster together at the Playboy Club opening. A few days later, Dempster told him that Charles Wintour exploded when he called for his daughter at Phillimore Gardens. Nigel said Charles was very angry, so I think Nigel had to always hide the fact that they were seeing each other, recounts Vine. Charles Wintour was a rather conservative chap and a powerful editor, and he couldn't think of his daughter going out with this sort of scurrilous gossip hack. Nigel wasn't acceptable to the Wintour family. See, but this is what I don't understand. Why are we jumping on Nigel? Nigel Dempster might be a mess, but Anna's the one going out to these clubs. Why is this Nigel's problem? Nigel shouldn't be taking her to those places. I agree, but he's a decade older than her. So if he wants to go to those places, okay, let him go. She's a minor. She's 16 years old. And what I'm struggling to understand is, why is the whole family being like, oh, stupid Nigel? Well, Nigel might be stupid, but he can be stupid on his own time. Your problem is you've let her go with him. That's the problem. And he wants to go to places that she oughtn't to go. But are we going to take some personal responsibility here, parents? Are we worried at all about that? Nevertheless, Anna was enthralled with the glitzy world Dempster opened to her, and their relationship continued on and off, Dempster claimed, for 7 years. Dempster likes to suggest he had a relationship with Anna, asserts London Daily Mail gossip writer Peter McKay. Dempster tells a story of how he was on a sofa in the drawing room of the Wintour house with Anna one evening when he looked up to see this very unnerving sight of these two scuffed suede shoes beneath the set of doors to the room. Charles Wintour had come home unexpectedly. Didn't come in the room, but was standing quietly outside eavesdropping. Dempster says he had to hide the romance from Wintour, who was in a position to get him fired. Brian Vine heard a similar tale from Dempster, with the details tweaked a bit. In that scenario, Dempster said he had to duck into a closet because Anna feared that her father would storm into the room and discover them together. Those who knew Dempster felt certain that the relationship was not intimate. Dempster would be frightened because he wanted a career as a journalist, observes Vine. Dempster's first wife from the early 1970s, Emma de Bendern, who came from a titled background, says, Anna was very young, and Nigel thought she was terribly beautiful. I'm sure it was a dating thing, she maintains. Before I married Nigel, he brought Anna to Spain, where my mother had a little house in Majorca, and I was living there. She came to stay with Nigel for a long weekend. She couldn't go in the sun because she had the most wonderfully translucent skin and sat under an umbrella so as not to get any light. She was sort of a porcelain doll, absolutely perfectly manicured, very quiet, very unassuming, hiding behind the fringe of her very immaculate bob, and her body incredibly skinny, but with extraordinary lurking determination. She didn't seem to have any personality, and I didn't feel that there was any asexuality about her. I just remember Nigel being rather protective, acting like a father towards her. I didn't feel there was any romance, but perhaps I was just being fooled. Perhaps that was a clever ruse to not arouse my suspicions. But if he was having an affair with her, there was no vibe. It didn't feel like it. If anything intimate was going on, one would have expected Anna to confess all to her best friend, but she remained mum. Anna never talked about sex or relationships, ever, says Vivian Lasky. We were not Sex in the City girls. And Anna's very British, very private. She's not touchy-feely. She never talked about what happened between her and a man. By 1971, Dempster had moved from lowly legman at the Daily Express to second in command under Paul Callan, who hired him to work on his new Daily Mail diary column. Callan quickly realized he had made a major mistake hiring Dempster, who tried to steal his job. According to one report, Dempster knifed him. It was classic stuff. He kept all his decent stories until Callan was away, and then produced them in a way that made Callan look second-rate. Whatever Callan might have thought about Dempster's career manipulations, Anna is said to have respected his cutthroat methods. They shared a similar philosophy. Get to the top any way you can, a journalist who knew them both says. So, as you can imagine, someone who's running the world at night, running through the streets of London with her gossip columnist boyfriend, and going to these big club openings and hobnobbing with the celebrities and dancing all night, school is just not that important. Because it would be a very rare person who went through life getting all A's, really cared about school, but then also had the stamina to stay out all night partying with her gossip columnist boyfriend. It's just, what a rarity that would be. I don't even know if it's possible to be doing both things so readily and with such intention. So it shouldn't surprise us that this next chapter is entitled Shop Girl Dropout, because how could she have maintained? But the thing that tips her over and makes her finally be like, I'm done with school, I'm not finishing, is something that, yes, would be humiliating, 100%, and I don't think it was handled well. But her parents have this whole mentality where it's like, well, it's really the school's fault that she wanted to drop out because, they pushed her over. It was just the last straw on the camel's back type of thing. Never, these parents, I think this is my frustration with the parents, and especially because her mom's a social worker, so you'd think they should be a little bit more aware of how to handle difficult situations, particularly difficult children, but her mom's just not interested. Parents are perpetually standing by the side of the road looking at a car they crashed going, I just wish that somebody would have told me that steering the car into this tree was going to cause an accident. I just wish that somebody around here would have done something about the fact that there was this tree by the side of the road and someone might have hit it. I feel like someone should have cut that tree down so this wouldn't have happened. It's like they're constantly blaming or acting just sort of shocked at the turn of events. And in this particular situation, as we'll see, when she drops out of school, it's like, I just wish the school hadn't handled it that way. And, I'm like, yeah, well, I kind of wish she'd been more part of her life this whole time instead of being like, isn't it unfortunate the way things turned out for Anna? Yeah, it is unfortunate, but all along the way, you could have had something to do with it. Shockingly, her parents think that, their whole goal for her was to go to some Oxford, some kind of Cambridge situation, some sort of Ivy League. But at what point in this journey were they preparing her for that to be the end game? They think that she was going to somehow get into one of these colleges on the track she was on? Anyway, let's keep going. Chapter 6, Shop Girl Dropout. If there is a singular defining moment for young Anna Wintour, it might have been the day her father summoned the Evening Standard's fashion editor, Barbara Griggs, into his office and said, I wonder if you could do me a great personal kindness. Griggs, who had been covering fashion for years and had once worked at British Vogue, said, Charles, I'd be delighted. What can I do? Sounding a bit uneasy, he said, well, my daughter Anna thinks she wants to do something in the fashion world. I wonder if you could take her out to lunch and give her some advice. I'll pay for the lunch, of course. Looking back at that moment years later, Griggs remarks, I don't think that Charles was big on fashion, and I don't think he wanted that for his favorite daughter. He hoped for more for Anna at that point. Griggs invited Anna to lunch and found herself sitting opposite this incredibly self-possessed child, extreme self-possession, which is unusual in someone of her age. She found Anna very focused and came away from their meeting thinking that the girl would go far. It appeared to me that she needed absolutely no advice from anyone, and she'd carve her own path fairly smoothly. The next day, still following through on her editor's request, Griggs telephoned Barbara Hulanicki, the owner of Bibba, one of the hottest boutiques in London, and asked her whether she had any part-time openings for a savvy and competent schoolgirl whose father happened to be the powerful editor of the Evening Standard. Anna was a regular customer and wore the styles Hulanicki promoted, knee-high boots, tight tops, and mini skirts. And Vivian Lasky firmly believes that Anna's obsession with clothing was strongly influenced by Bibba and its fashions. The boutique became a glittering star in London's 60s fashion firmament, influencing the way girls in the street dressed. Hula Nikki paid particular attention to the cut of her clothes, giving them a couture look so every girl who wore her designs was made to look thin. Overnight, Bibba's customer base cut through the class system and changed from strictly working-class girls to include pop stars, actresses, aristocrats, and all the young fashionistas like Anna who wanted the look. An expert at promotion, Hula Nikki shrewdly designed outfits particularly for influential trendsetters like Kathy McGowan and for the very visible pop singer Cilla Black. Julie Christie wore Bibba for her role in Darling, and iconic model Twiggy's reed-thin frame was always draped in Bibba's designs. Bibba's hot mail-order catalog used photographers like Helmut Newton, a favorite of Anna's when she became a fashion editor, to produce shots that juxtaposed innocence and knowingness, which, in fact, was the image Anna possessed in the eyes of men during the 60s and 70s. As Hula Nikki remembers the call from her fashion editor friend at the Evening Standard, Barbara Griggs asked, "Oh, could the daughter of Charles Wintour come and have a holiday job? Just to learn about working in a boutique." Hula Nikki said yes immediately. A prominent editor's daughter as a shopgirl couldn't hurt business, and hired her to help out on Saturdays and holidays in her Kensington Church Street shop, and also at a Bibba branch in touristy Brighton on the English Channel. Hula Nikki often escorted Anna and a few other girls on the 1-hour train ride. They spent the day working in the shop, returning that night. Anna would have been about 15, 16, Hula Nikki recalls, and she was very young, very sweet, very pretty, and very, very quiet. But I had a feeling her intellect was definitely a little bit higher than fashion. Anna came from an educated family, and most of the Bibba girls didn't. She was not typical, but she became one of the girls who were learning the boutique business. Hula Nikki was intrigued with Anna and kept a close watch on her. While Anna appeared shy and timid, I could see she was taking everything in, Hula Nikki says. Anna was interested in fashion, but also Bibba was the place to be. Boutiques were the most important places in those days. All the girls wanted to work in them. Hula Nikki remembers Anna, who was paid about $15 a day, as being quite chubby compared to the other Bibba girls, who looked even skinnier than Twiggy. But that may have been because of eating disorders or, worse still, drugs. But most of them were older than Anna, at least 18. A number of them lived extremely wild lives. Some became addicts or alcoholics, and others died tragically in a series of auto accidents, probably intoxicated or stoned, victims of the excesses of swinging London. Bibba was a scene, to say the least. Beautiful, tall, very skinny Joanna Dingman, Anna's age, and also a Saturday girl, later a Bibba manager, a Paris model, and a fashion school teacher, said that even then Anna stood out from the beautiful crowd, an elegant, and she notes, very furry vision. She used to wear fur, a full-length fox coat, at a time when it was becoming unfashionable to wear fur. It was just sort of going out of favor, not in a political sense like today, but just in terms of style. But there she was draped in it. Anna went her own way. Well, Charles Wintour used his good name and influence to get Anna her boutique gig, and it would not be the last time her father's power would help her up the ladder. His hope then was that Anna wasn't really serious about fashion as a career. Charles and Noni thought it was just a phase, observes Vivian Lasky. It was what she expected them to say. Her parents didn't understand it, but Anna had latched onto fashion with a passion that would endure. By 16, she was fashion, fashion, fashion all the way. The London fashion revolution had encompassed her. Years later, remembering that time, Anna said, "You would have had to have been living up in Scotland underground to not have been affected by it." Bridget Lasky gave Anna the kind of encouragement for her passion that she didn't get at home. Lasky, who wore couture, and Anna talked constantly about clothes and style, the kind of conversations Anna never had with her own mother. As a social worker, Noni Wintour wore thick glasses, shunned makeup, and dressed conservatively. "Like a working person, Talboty," says Vivian Lasky. Noni was more like Hillary Clinton. "Can't be bothered. I'll wear the next navy blue suit." Noni wore navy a lot. Later, when she got into fashion magazines, Anna would buy clothes for her mother to make her appearance smarter. Unlike Anna, none of the other Wintours had a sense of style and all dressed plainly. Anna hated badly dressed people, recalls Lasky. We'd sit on Bond Street having tea at some trendy place, and she'd comment on all the people. She was very judgmental. Everybody had to be perfect. She criticized their clothes. How can people go out like that? Don't they ever look in the mirror? Anna once bought an expensive Dior dress shirt for her brother Jim, who wore it incorrectly, letting it hang out of his trousers, and Anna just shook her head and rolled her eyes. For Anna to have come out of that family is amazing, states Drusilla Bafus-Schulman, a one-time editor at British Vogue and a Wintour family friend. They were all terribly badly dressed. They were laughable. Nora's clothes were pathetic. They were all pathetic. Nora's a rather plain girl and suffered dreadfully from being a plain girl in Anna's shadow. She was always the plain sister, and Anna was incredibly pretty, always looked wonderful. Family friend, you say? This lady seems pretty hardcore. Kind of a aggressive way to criticize that younger sister, right? But maybe that's just me. Anyway, she continues. Right from the age of 12, it seems Anna was convinced of the almost psychic power of clothes. When she went off with her boyfriends, age 13 or whatever, she always looked just dreamy. I remember seeing her in a very shiny white coat and boots, vinyl I guess, and she was going off to spend a holiday in Switzerland. She must have been about 14, and she just looked marvelous. Schulman says that Anna's parents never understood her early obsession with fashion. She compares their response to parents who are stunned to discover their son or daughter as a music prodigy. Where did it come from? Who knows? Why do these amazing qualities emerge? They just do. It came from no one in the Wintour family, that's for certain. Her secret is natural talent. Because of their close relationship, Anna took Bridget Lasky into her confidence, one of the few women who ever entered that charmed circle. Shockingly, Anna complained that her mother seemed more concerned about and loving toward the foster and adoptive children in her case files than about Anna herself. Anna saw her as a motherly figure, but not to her own flesh and blood children. Anna referred bitterly to the children in her mother's case files as Nonnie's kids. While Anna rarely showed any form of emotion, she clearly felt some resentment toward her mother because she wasn't more of her focus. It made Anna feel second fiddle, says Vivian Lasky. Lasky, who remained friends with Anna's mother for years, believes that Nonnie Wintour felt absolutely fulfilled because of her social work with children. Maybe by throwing herself in and saving other people's children, Nonnie was compensating for the loss of her first child whom she couldn't save. Anna had the same hunger for Charles Wintour's attention, a father figure and mentor to his staffers at the newspaper, but not often there for his own daughter. Years later, she acknowledged, "When I was a child, I was never alone with my father. There was just too many of us. He was the one we were frightened of, but he wasn't judgmental. He's discreet and charming in that way, but he notices everything, and you know what he thinks all the same." He was even more tied to his work than his wife. Anna said she didn't see much of him because of his newspaper and remembered interrupted holidays whenever wars broke out or people got killed. Anna complained that her parents were usually out and that she spent a lot of time as a child with nannies and au pairs. Nonnie had a work ethic, and Charles had an incredible work ethic, says Lasky. They had the same passions for what they were doing and stayed with those passions. Anna has it too, an extraordinary work ethic. But when Anna did see her father when he was home from the office or taking time from social engagements, he generated excitement, telling her which celebrity or famous politician had come into the office that day, or the big story the paper was working on. He passed on to her the same rush of adrenaline that made him rub his hands together and shout, "Ha!" in the Evening Standard newsroom, when exciting stories like the John Profumo-Christine Keeler sex scandal came thick and fast as they did in the 60s. He made Anna feel empowered. He made her feel like an insider. She thought it was wonderful getting to know firsthand something that would make headlines the next day. Nonnie and Charles really did like their children, and they were much admired by them. But there never was a particularly cozy family feeling because Charles' mind was always inevitably elsewhere. You can't edit a paper like the Evening Standard and have your mind focused on whatever Anna wants to do in the afternoon. That didn't exist, observes Drusilla Bafus-Schulman. I won't say Charles was an absentee father because he was certainly concerned about his children. But he was at his desk very early in the morning and was there all day, dined out with people in the evening. He didn't have a lot of time left over for Anna. Anna found a surrogate of sorts in Vivian Lasky's autocratic father, the esteemed Melvin Lasky, who wasn't an easy man to spend time with because he could be horribly caustic and cutting. But Anna? Anna was tops in Lasky's book. He used all his charm around her, probably because Anna was reverential and worshipful. She naturally knew how to handle men and their egos, and appeared captivated and enchanted by his stories about the celebrities he knew, and the instantly recognizable writers like Mailer and Eliot and Auden and other big names, whose pieces he edited and corrected. Anna'd sit at the table seemingly spellbound, but sometimes peppering him with questions. Did he know this person? Had he met that person? Do famous writers ever object to your correcting them? Anna knew that her own father's style was to keep hands off his reporter's copy unless absolutely necessary. Some will ask, did you change anything? Lasky told her. Anna, you have to make them feel like that's the way they wrote it. Well, the Wintors gave Anna an extraordinary amount of independence. Her own apartment, freedom to date older men, clubbing until all hours. Charles and Noni's prime concern was over her disinterest in school, as underscored by her attitude at North London Collegiate. Charles from Cambridge and Noni from Radcliffe were educational elites, and they wanted her to graduate and go to a proper university. The Wintors had planned for Nora, Patrick, and James, all academic high achievers, to receive Oxbridge educations, and had started putting the pressure on Anna. I remember them discussing it with Anna, telling her, "You'll be the first not to go." Of course, they expected her to follow in their footsteps, Vivian Lasky says. Charles was the great brain of the family, notes Drusilla Bayfus Schulman, and Anna was, well, pretty. As the great brain of the family, Charles always took a rather skeptical view of Anna's intellectual capabilities. In 1966, the Wintors' tug-of-war with Anna over her schooling became a moot point. About to turn 17, Anna had it with North London Collegiate. It would be a piece of clothing, the miniskirt, that helped bring down the curtain on her formal education. When Anna was nabbed for small infractions during her 3 years at North London, she usually got off the hook, mostly because the headmistress, Dame Kitty Anderson, was a friend of Charles Wintor's brother-in-law, Lord James of Rasholme, a noted educator. Because of Dame Kitty's ties to the Wintors, Anna felt a sense of entitlement. But all that changed when the headmistress retired in July 1965 and was replaced by Madeline McLaughlin, who proceeded to make life miserable for Anna. She was cold and hard, recalls Lasky, and acted like she had a stick up her ass. The whole school changed. It became very tense. Tests were given that no one passed. Everybody felt insecure. Like the stories surrounding Charles Wintor's handling of the tragic news of his first child's death, there are variations to the story of the sudden demise of Anna's school career. The only thing that's documented is a simple notation in the records of North London Collegiate School. According to the archivist, Ellen Curran, Anna, quote, was here from 1963 to 1966. Nothing in the record speaks of her graduating. While she's one of the most famous and successful women to have attended North London Collegiate, she left barely a trace of herself. As Curran states, sadly, we do not have any further information of Anna Wintour in our archive. Anna entered the hallowed halls of North London Collegiate for the last time one day in July 1966, age 16, wearing a skirt way above her knees. She was spotted by McLaughlin, who decided to make an example of her. Anna was always 6 months ahead of fashion, Charles Wintor once said in discussing the end of his daughter's schooling. At North London Collegiate, she was getting on famously, until a new headmistress arrived and spotted Anna's miniskirt. She stood Anna on a table and ripped her hems down. Then Anna had to go home on the tube in a torn skirt, and quite seriously, it finished her interest in academic life. Okay. That is really, really unnecessarily abusive of that teacher, of the headmistress, to have done that to a student. There's no reason to shame somebody like that. Now, I know that Anna had had many, many infractions, but not under this woman's watch. So as far as this woman should have been concerned, it was a clean slate between her and Anna. However, she decided to take this opportunity to embarrass her, tear her skirt up, and then send her home. I mean, is she one of the evil stepsisters in Cinderella? Like, what in the world is going on here?
And look, that's my sash wearing my sash. She can't. Oh, God, please stop. And my ribbon. Take kitchen.
But for her father to say Anna was getting along famously at North London Collegiate, you know, everything was going swimmingly until, and I'm like, oh, but was it? I mean, Anna was in trouble all the time. She just never had any consequences. She got called in all the time and talked to all the time, but there were no consequences to the fact that she would not follow dress code rules or, I don't know, show up to class. So, yeah, of course she's getting along swimmingly when everyone's willing to turn the blind eye to her and not report to you that there's trouble. I don't know that anyone could say she was ever getting along swimmingly at North London Collegiate. But that's his interpretation in order to overemphasize the fact that this one woman did overreact to Anna's short skirt. Now look, That's the problem with when you have uniforms and you're a school that has uniforms. I'm fine with uniforms, but the getting the girls to follow the rules when it comes to uniforms, or the boys when it comes to uniforms, whatever, depending on, it's a nightmare. It's the thing you want to give up first. As a teacher who has worked at private schools, who has a dress code and who have a uniform, it is a nightmare. And I think it's because there's so many things all day long to say no about that it does feel like, oh my gosh, do I also have to come after you about pull your skirt down, girls, tuck your shirts in, put your blazer on? It's like, it's always a thing. And it feels like all you're doing all day long is nitpicking these kids. But at the same time, uniforms are a way of showing respect for yourself, wearing your uniform well. And so, I understand the fight to get the girls to wear their uniforms and to wear them correctly. I just don't see that you are ever going to earn anybody's favor by putting a student up and tearing their skirt up and then sending them home embarrassed. As a teacher who would do something like that, or a headmistress who would do something like that, is trying to make an example of this one student. But in doing so, all she's done is make enemies of all the girls in the school who see you as a tyrant and a dictator. And any girl who would then kowtow to that kind of authority, who would meekly come to you and be like, kiss your boot and try to make sure that you're always nice to them, isn't a person of strong enough character that you would want in your school. You don't want a bunch of weaklings who would cower to a dictator like that. Now, in this instance, this person probably thought that girls like that would be easier to handle. Is that what you want to produce as an educator? These bunch of spineless little girls who, will cower at the first hint of a bully? But that's what you've created. You've either created people who are going to rebel against you. So you got all a whole mass of people rebelling against you. Or you then have a whole team of girls who are just a bunch of brown nosers who are going to lick your boot and then ask for more. It's like, a person who would do something like that to a student has no end goal in what they're trying to produce from the students there. None whatsoever. That is a person who is desperately trying to, in the moment, solve a problem, but has no end game. What are we expecting? What are we hoping to happen from doing something like that? That's an idiot of a headmistress. That is a fool. That's somebody who has no long game prepared for these girls and what they're trying to produce out of these girls to send them on their way. So if Charles is upset about that, I'd be upset too, because mostly this person has shown that they have zero goals or end games for my daughter when they leave. All she was trying to do was humiliate the girl in the moment without thinking that I'm now creating two factions of people, the rebels and the sycophants. But where are the people in the middle who we can actually get some stuff done in these halls of learning? So I'm not against Charles being like, that was ridiculous. Of course it was ridiculous. But for him to act as though Anna had never had any problems at this school and had always done her very best, that's a little wantonly ignorant. Anyway, as Drusilla Bayfus Schulman recalls the incident, it not only ended Anna's interest in schooling, but caused her actually to quit North London Collegiate a year early. Anna didn't graduate from anywhere. According to her version of events, Anna cut her gym skirt so that it was above the knee. I mean well above the knee, which was a very prophetic thing to do in terms of fashion. Those very short skirts had only just kind of kicked in. Anyway, her French mistress lifted Anna up onto a desk and said, "Look at this girl. She's not worthy of this great school, and she's just obsessed with clothes. She can go home." And so Anna left North London Collegiate and never went back. So also in that instance, if that's the case, I mean, it's similar. The details are slightly different, but still an instructor, a headmistress, pointing out this girl, shaming her, and thinking that that's really going to create legions of obedient students. I mean, please. Anna's rather proud of the story. It is entirely consistent with her character, very self-possessed, and also with this sort of sense that she was doing the right thing. Whichever way it happened, Anna had permanently finished her formal schooling at 16, leaving in a snit over having to play by the rules. Her last day was July 27th, 1966. She was rebellious and clearly had had it with school, states Lasky. Anna's parents' worst fears had been that she wouldn't go to college. They never expected her to be a high school dropout. "I guess I went the other way," Anna acknowledged many years later. "My sister always had this joke when she left a message on my answering machine. She asked if I was at the hairdresser's or the dry cleaner's. So I was always the bimbo." Now the Wintors were concerned about Anna's future. and had come to the realization that her preternatural preoccupation with fashion wasn't just a phase as they first thought. Her father's dreams of her following in his footsteps were also dashed, because she wasn't interested in working in the newspaper business, in getting her delicate hands soiled with printer's ink. As Anna has stated, she never tried to prove anything to her parents. Her interest in fashion was all-consuming, but what she would do with that interest was still undefined and unfocused. "I'm not a very introspective person," she once said, reminiscing about that period, "so I didn't have a great game plan for life." Interesting. But see, I don't think that's true. I think she did have a game plan for life. I think that her plan was fashion. She might not have known how she was going to get there, but I think that she had learned thus far that she could pretty much have anything her own way, so long as she just pushed hard enough or found the right people to ensconce herself with. So I think that she had learned. She'd been giving herself her own education in the underground of London, running around at all these clubs, being seen with all these people. I think that she was networking before that was even a word. And I think that she knew that school wasn't important because she hadn't needed fashion at school, but the world was run by fashion, and she was part of the world. And so I think that she very clearly saw that there would be a place for her in the world. There was no place for her at school. Her interests weren't catered to, but there was a whole other place, a whole other education that she'd been getting in which fashion was the dominant subject, and she knew about that. So maybe she didn't have a game plan as far as like she couldn't do a PowerPoint presentation on it, but I think she had enough of her own personality, and I think she had enough hands-on knowledge of how fashion worked that she believed she could find her way in. Obviously, she knew what she was about because, I mean, up until just recently, she was the editor of Vogue, American Vogue, which is, of course, higher than any of the Vogues, any of the iterations of Vogue. But anyway, I'm eager to see what happens with her after this, because I just don't see how she is going to get her feet underneath her from this point. I believe she has a feeling that she's going to be able to make it. And obviously we know the end of the story and know that she did, but I've not read ahead, so I don't know how we're going to connect. I don't know how we're going to go from A to Z here. I just don't know how a high school dropout becomes the editor of American Vogue. That's wild to me. But we shall see. All right, thank you so much for hanging out with me. I'll see you guys again tomorrow. Then, of course, on Friday, we got our Friday News Roundup, which I'm very eager for because I've been saving stories all week, and my goodness, it's going to be like a 2-hour episode. I mean, not really. I could never edit a 2-hour episode, but it's long. It's going to be long because there's so much to talk about. All right, I'll see you guys soon. Thanks so much for hanging out. Bye.